Do you have a favorite place? Today I'm going to share with you about one of my favorite places, one of my favorite regions in the United States. That's the Virginia Shenandoah Valley. I want to share with you about this region and its historical significance so that as we talk about the Battle of Newmarket that happened on May 15th, 1864, it will make sense. We have to have the context of a place so that we can understand the events that happened there. I'm Sarah K. Byerly with Gazette 66.5, and I invite you to join me for a conversation about the Virginian Shenandoah Valley. According to local legend, the name Shenandoah comes from a Native American word that means daughter of the stars. While some have called this legend into question over the years, it does reflect some of the cultural and heritage traditions of the area, which includes Native Americans who lived in the valley region and then interacted with the European settlers who were making their way into the valley in the early colonial period. The Shenandoah Valley is created by the Blue Ridge Mountains to the east and the Allegheny Mountains to the west. The valley is approximately 160 miles in length and averages 25 miles across. One of the really important things to understand about the Shenandoah Valley is direction. Sure, you can pull out a compass, you can pull out your GPS and know where is north and where is south. But when you talk about direction in the valley, it seems a little backwards until you get used to it. Here's the reason why. The Shenandoah River, which flows through the valley, flows south to north. It actually flows north and runs into the Potomac River. So, when you travel south in the valley, you say you are going up the valley, and when you travel north in the Shenandoah Valley, you say you are going down the valley. So when we talk about the Newmarket campaign during the Civil War, we'll say that the Union troops under Franz Sigel came up the valley to Newmarket, while the Confederate troops under John C. Breckinridge moved down the valley to Newmarket. Got the directions? If in case you didn't quite catch it, Breckinridge and the Confederates move north, Sigel and his Yankees move south. They clash at Newmarket, which is a small town in the central part of the valley. Now, near Newmarket, there's a little bit of a twist in the topography. I told you about the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Allegheny Mountains. Well, near Newmarket, there is a mountain that runs down the middle of the valley. That's called Massanutten Mountain. I'm standing on the east part of Newmarket Battlefield, and Newmarket Gap is visible directly behind me. Newmarket Gap was extremely important during the Civil War because it was basically the only way over Massanutten Mountain that an army could be moved. So if you picture the Shenandoah Valley, it's bordered by the Allegheny Mountains to the west and the Blue Ridge to the east. Then, from Harrisonburg to Winchester, there's a big mountain running down the middle of the valley. That's called Massanutten Mountain. Think of it like an alley with two walls. The only way to get out of this alley and go east is Newmarket Gap, which is why it was so strategic and so important. So, when was the Shenandoah Valley discovered by European settlers who were colonizing the North American shores? It was about 1760 when the first colonial settlers venture in as exploring parties into the valley, a region that had been the homeland, the battlegrounds, the hunting trails for Native American peoples for centuries. As the colonial settlers started coming into the Shenandoah Valley, they brought with them a unique cultural heritage. Many of them came from Germany, from Scotland, from Ireland, and the majority of them also had a religious faith that was different than the Church of England or the Anglican Church. So you have Reformed religion coming out of Germany, you have Presbyterianism coming out of Scotland, you also have Mennonites, Quakers, and other smaller religious groups that are building communities, building settlements in the Shenandoah Valley. This is in contrast to the more English Anglican settlers that are typically found in eastern and central Virginia during the colonial period. The difference in religion, the difference in ethnicity, and the backgrounds, cultural backgrounds that these people came from played a big influence in how the Shenandoah Valley developed culturally and stood in slight difference to what was going on the eastern side. In the Shenandoah Valley, from the colonial period through the antebellum era, through the Civil War, and even up into more recent times, the small farm economy has been very prevalent in the region. So this is small farms, they're growing crops that are then support the family, the extra is sent to market or to some place where it is sold and transported, usually out of the valley. The transportation road system that was developed in the early 19th century in the valley played a really big role. The Old Valley Turnpike was used for transportation of commerce, including grain, livestock, and other agricultural products in and out of the valley, and that was a big part of the local economy. Now let me check my notes here so I get this right. In 1860, so the year prior to the beginning of the American Civil War, they did some records on the Shenandoah Valley's agricultural production. And having this information helps us see why the valley was known as the breadbasket of the Confederacy. It was a highly productive agricultural area. So here's some numbers. In the overall production of Virginia, the valley was producing 18.6% of the wheat grown in the state. They produced 9.3% of the corn, which was the secondary cash crop for the valley, and they produced 27% of the state's rye, which was used for whiskey making. In addition to the agricultural and animal husbandry that took place in the valley, there were also distilleries, sawmills, grist mills. I'm standing here at Rockfish Gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains, and behind me is the Shenandoah Valley. During the American Civil War, the Shenandoah Valley was a highly contested area. There were quite a few campaigns and many battles fought in this region. If you're wondering why, there's 3 reasons that are important to keep in mind. First, the Shenandoah Valley was highly strategic. Whichever side, Union or Confederate, controlled the valley had access to the other side's capital, be it Washington, D.C. or Richmond, Virginia. So it's important in that strategic sense. Number 2, it was important because a lot of agricultural production happened in the Shenandoah Valley. The Confederates wanted to hold on to the valley because they were growing a lot of food to feed the Army of Northern Virginia. The Union troops and generals, of course, realized the agricultural production of the region, and if they could stop or hinder that production, then the Confederate Army was going to have a harder time staying in the field. Again, this is an example of Confederates want to defend, the Union want to attack and take the valley. And finally, the third reason that the Shenandoah Valley was so important, both sides could use it as an avenue for armies. With a pretty good road system called the Valley Turnpike, an army could get into the Shenandoah Valley, and if their cavalry was operating properly, they could move that army quite a distance before the other side realized where they were. For example, during the Gettysburg Campaign, Robert E. Lee uses the Shenandoah Valley to move his Army of Northern Virginia north, and for a variety of reasons, General Joseph Hooker, Union Army of course, takes his own time in following up on Lee. So Lee's able to use the Shenandoah Valley as an avenue for armies quite successfully. So those are 3 things to keep in mind when considering the Shenandoah Valley and the American Civil War. Rockfish Gap, which really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the Battle of Newmarket or the Newmarket campaign. However, it's a very nice view of the Shenandoah Valley. So I wanted to talk briefly about the Shenandoah Valley and just mention that the Newmarket campaign in May 1864 is not the first time that there was fighting in the Shenandoah Valley. Since it was a strategic location, both sides, Union and Confederate, spent most of the war trying to either control, defend, or attack the Shenandoah Valley. For example, in the spring of 1862, just 2 years before the Newmarket campaign, Confederate General Stonewall Jackson fights his famous 1862 Shenandoah Valley campaign. In this campaign, he and his troops marched 646 miles in 48 days. They fight 6 battles and win 5 out of the 6 battles, successfully driving 3 Union armies out of the region, and for a short time leaving the valley in Confederate hands. Of course, the Confederates don't hold on to the valley all the time, nor will they have it at the end of the war. As Confederate General Stonewall Jackson said, if the valley is lost, Virginia is lost. And Union troops were well aware of that. Franz Sigel, the Union general in the Newmarket campaign, is just one in a long string of Union generals who tried to capture and hold the Shenandoah Valley for the Union. Eventually, it will be Union General Philip Sheridan in the autumn of 1864 who will finally secure a Union victory in the valley and manage to hold on to the valley for the remainder of the war. So as we wrap up today's discussion, today's video about the Shenandoah Valley, a few things that you might want to keep in mind as we think about it in the overall history of the American Civil War is the agricultural production and strategic area of this very unique valley made it a prime target during the Civil War period. The Confederates want to hold on to that region, the Union wants to take it over. Obviously, there's going to be a conflict. As we head into the Newmarket campaign in May of 1864, the Union generals know the strategic importance of the valley. They want to capture the region. They also know that if they can control that Shenandoah Valley, they are going to be able to guard their extended flank or their extended side of their army, which would prevent a Confederate attack from coming in on the side. The Confederates wanted to hold on to the region. They wanted the agriculture supply, they wanted the advantage of being able to execute those flank attacks or go up and threaten Washington City, or Washington, D.C. as we now call it. So, conflict is going to emerge. Numerous conflicts. We've talked briefly about Jackson's Shenandoah Valley campaign. We've talked briefly about the Confederates using the valley during the Gettysburg campaign. In May 1864, another campaign heads into the Shenandoah Valley. This will be known as the Newmarket campaign, and its climax is the Battle of Newmarket, fought near the town of Newmarket in Shenandoah County in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. Got that? We'll be talking more about this Battle of Newmarket, the campaign and how the armies got there, and the civilians who lived in the town as our discussion continues in the next weeks. Today we've talked overall about the Shenandoah Valley. Join us next week and we're going to delve into the local history of Newmarket, because it's my belief that you have to understand about a place, about a region, about a town, before you can really understand the battle, the conflict that happened there, and how it affected the local community. If you have visited the Shenandoah Valley, or if you've driven Skyline Parkway in Shenandoah National Park, if you have a favorite town or place in this unique and beautiful valley, I'd love to hear about it. Please leave a comment on the video or on the blog, and I look forward to sharing about one of my favorite towns in the valley next week. Until then, have a great and inspired week, and that's all for today. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.